Well, Stuart, it's very nice to catch up with you. You're a partner in Abu Dhabi, and I was talking with your fellow partner Nilesh just a week or so ago about events in the region. Tell me what's going on from your perspective in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, no, Rodney, thanks very much for having myself and Nilesh a couple of weeks ago. I thought that was a great session where Nilesh gave a bit of perspective of what's happening in the UAE and in the region in respect of taxation, which is, as you heard, quite a lot. Here in Abu Dhabi, which is an hour and a half down the road from Dubai. So we're seeing a couple of things, Rodney. I think the first thing, just to note, following on Nilesh's thing, there is actually an income tax decree in the Emirates here. It dates from the 60s. It just hasn't been implemented practically, but it does apply to oil and gas companies. So we do a lot of work with the oil and gas companies here. So there is a 55% rate in the decree. However, that rate tends to be negated because most oil and gas companies have a separate fiscal regime with ADNOC and the Supreme Petroleum Council, which sets out the corporate income tax rate, the royalties, and any super profits taxes. So there is tax for oil and gas companies, and we do a lot of that work here in Abu Dhabi. There's quite a lot of the foreign oil and gas companies are in joint ventures with ADNOC on a range of projects. So that's something that we do a lot here of. I suppose the other thing that we've seen quite a bit of is that the UAE is marketing itself as a bit of a regional hub. There's a couple of free zones. There's one in Dubai called the DIFC, and there's one here in Abu Dhabi called ADGM. And they're trying to attract companies to set up here regionally and operate across the Middle East and possibly into North Africa. And they provide tax incentives. They provide an ecosystem for companies to set up. They provide arbitration, English law, and the like. And so we are seeing, companies using the UAE, Abu Dhabi, and Dubai as regional hubs.
That's really interesting, Stuart. Is the trend increasing from your perspective, in that you're seeing more clients starting to use the UAE as a regional hub?
I think that's right, Rodney. And the Ministry of Finance here has been very active in negotiating double taxation agreements. There's about 130 in place. About 100 of those are in force at the moment. So it is an area that the government has been trying to attract investment into the UAE, and to the extent that they run their regional operations here, and particularly if you look at Saudi Arabia, which is obviously a big market here, and we just concluded a double tax treaty with the Saudis last year.
Gosh, that's actually a very wide range of treaties, because I compare that to, say, the US, which has substantially fewer treaties. How is the MLI impacting the UAE treaty network?
Yeah, look, and I suppose, Rodney, there are a lot of treaties. There are gaps in that treaty network. So some of the major countries, still don't have treaties. So there's still a way to go with that. And the other group of companies that are interested in that is we do a lot of work also, the large sovereign wealth funds here, large government-owned corporations. They're very international, across all sectors: oil and gas, food security, technology, alternate energy, and the like. And they invest globally from the UAE. And so they're very, very active, in investments globally. They're also very active with their government, therefore, in making sure that the government is concluding the right sort of treaties and instruments which make it easier for them to invest.
And how has the current health pandemic situation played out in the region?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So from an investment perspective, we haven't seen, because the UAE is fairly international, we haven't seen a lot of slowdown. I think there's been a little bit of caution with a lot of the enterprises here, particularly if I talk about the sovereign wealth funds. You've also had a low oil price as well at the same time, which has had an impact. And so I think people have been cautious with investments, but we're still seeing quite a lot of activity, and in particular areas. So food security is a big area, health, obviously, supply chain. So in those sort of key areas that the government has determined that they need to focus on, we are seeing a lot of activity.
Fascinating. So we have a picture of almost like a regional hub evolving quite quickly for North Africa and the region, and a well-settled legal system for foreign investors investing through the system, and a pretty wide treaty network. That sounds pretty good. It must be keeping you very busy, Stuart.
No, we're sort of trying to keep like everybody, trying to deal day to day with the current crisis. But actually, Rodney, one of the things that we would be interested in, obviously you interview a lot of people, and prior to the COVID, you got around quite a bit, and the UAE is a 0% corporate income tax regime. It's not your traditional tax haven pile of rocks in the Caribbean, but we are seeing obviously moves globally for some sort of global minimum corporate income tax rate. I'd be interested in your thoughts. What impact do you think that will have on countries like the UAE that have a zero or low tax rate at the moment?
Well, it's a great question, Stuart. So first of all, let's wait and see what actually unfolds, and it's going to unfold next week. So we'll see what the OECD has to say next. I think for those countries that traded principally on a low tax rate as opposed to other matters of efficiency, clearly for them there's going to be some challenges, right? Those countries that base their economy on having no taxes. The UAE sounds and is substantially different in that it has a very sophisticated legal system to attract multinationals, and it provides efficiency throughout the region. So it's in a much better place than perhaps some of its potential competitors are. And we tend to find that when we talk to clients about setting up their operations, yes, they're very much interested in the tax system. So of course, that's always going to be a factor, but they're more interested in those other things that countries like the UAE has to offer: legal system, treaty networks, access. And so, it'll be interesting to see how it impacts the UAE. Maybe the UAE will look to reconsider its base of taxation, that 60s decree that you talked about, as these rules unfold during this year.
And so, Rodney, we're expecting to see something in the next week or so. Is that
so the OECD is scheduled to release the next set of proposals October 12th. So in less than a week. So we'll see what those have to say, and we'll be going from there.
Okay, that's good to know.
Well, Stuart, it's fantastic catching up with you. I look forward to seeing you in person again. When we start flying again, I don't know, sometime next year. But it'll be good to see you again in person, and thank you for your time today.
No, and Rodney, thanks very much for the opportunity to talk to you today. Appreciate it.